we worship GDP. Now, I don't personally, because I
Capitalism reigns supreme. Greed
now,
is good.
So here's our temple.
Yes.
But the problem is the economic system itself is hacking away at the very things which make life
So visually,
possible.
the foundations are looking a bit wonky there, Kevin.
Now, these foundations are natural resources, a stable climate, cheap energy, abundant minerals, and ocean chemistry. Now, anybody that does any research on any of these topics, and there are others, find that we're in dire straits on virtually all of them.
Is there one that's particularly more of a concern than the other? They all look to be equally in a crisis situation.
Well, look, they are all linked together. Atmospheric chemistry is linked to ocean chemistry, but in terms of impact, it's atmospheric chemistry.
The big ones we hear about in the mainline media, though, is the depletion of fossil fuels, the energy crisis that's looming, and also global warming. So you're a man who can speak succinctly. What is this crisis or this phenomenon called peak oil? We read about it again and again in the paper. Let's have it from the expert, from the horse's mouth, metaphorically speaking.
Well, way back in the 1930s, there was a transition from a coal-based society to an oil-based society. And there was a growth in consumption of oil based largely on American production. There were some oil wars in the 1970s which depressed demand. After that, we were back on the same bandwagon of increasing use, but unfortunately, oil is not an infinite resource, and we are at peak oil
just get that
now,
right hand away from the chart. That's it,
which is here. Now, this is not a clearly defined day or month even, but it's a period of time when oil extraction reaches a maximum and then goes into terminal decline. And at that point, it won't make any difference.
So you believe, as we speak, demand for oil is greater than the sourcing,
the capacity to pump it out the ground. That's what we're talking about.
And that's due to a number of factors, obviously due to the buoyant economies now of both India and China, and the SUVs and just the bad habits of Americans and people in the Western world, and and we could go on and on and on. So people are saying, we've been hearing about this for decades, Kevin. Why be a doomster? What's the big deal, in your opinion?
Well, we're in, I don't know whether the camera can actually pick this up, but we're in a no-win situation here. The faster we pump the oil out in order to meet current demand, the worse off we're going to be a few years down the track. It's a self-defeating situation. Not only that, of course, it's the quality of the oil, because all the best oil has already been used, and the world economy is increasingly dependent on lower quality oil, which means it's more gluggy, it's a higher sulfur content, it's more difficult to get out the ground. Now, our whole society is dependent on this. And at some stage, we are going to reach the point where there is a severe crisis, and effectively this is going to be the end of Western society. Now, unless we prepare for this, this is going to be pretty catastrophic.
Now, in case people think you're being a jerry-made and alarmist, I also did a little bit of research today, and on the internet and so forth. And it's ironic, Kevin, that on the very day that you agree to this interview, the big lead story from America was today. The price of crude oil in the US of A is below $50. It's the lowest it's been since May 25, 2005. And oil has dropped 17% since the end of 2006. And I also read in the same articles that the reserves in the crude oil stocks in America have risen considerably. So is this a hiatus or a false security? Because you're having this interview and yet people have got more money in their pocket, and right now petrol's really low, and you can go to Pack and Save and New World and you get vouchers, and oil's cheap.
It is.
Oil's cheap.
Far too cheap. You're quite right, Brian.
So your message seems to be a bit incongruous with what's happening at the moment.
This is, of course, the great irony, because global warming has actually increased the temperature of North America to the extent that the North Americans are not buying home heating oil. And this has taken the pressure off of the system. The other thing that's not very widely reported is the fact that a lot of economies can no longer afford to buy oil.
Right.
So they've dropped right out of the market. Places like Zimbabwe, Indonesia, the Philippines, their economies have been crippled by high
So what's
prices.
happening at the petrol pumps at the moment here in Taranaki, and what's happening in America is a delusion. It's a false.
Oh, it is.
It's a false calm.
And sorry to interrupt you, but of course
Yeah.
the other thing is the New Zealand dollar has risen from about 60 cents to
Right.
about 70 cents. So this creates this
This
pure
false-
illusion that
Yes.
things are fine. And in
Ah.
fact, they have never been worse.
Because if I go to New World right now and I spend more than $60 on
Yes.
groceries, I get a 10-cent discount on a litre of petrol, and petrol's quite low at the moment.
Absolutely. This just keeps the delusion running. This is
Right.
horrifying from the point of view of anybody who wants to bring to
Yeah.
attention the fact
Sure.
that we are at